Not that we would put that on the news or anything.
Hi. Ready? Thank you. You're ready, right?
How you doing?
Good, good.
Hey, Congressman. How are you? See you. See yourself. Bill, who invited you?
I know. So, yeah, you gotta go through it.
So even though we violate the RNC.
Everybody knows it's not lighted in here, right?
I'm just gonna put mine up.
Okay.
So, because that's the date that's.
Why can't you just move it a week later?
You theoretically could, so a lot of.
Good.
a lot of
You too.
Yeah.
You don't want this morning?
What's that? No. I was, we were over there. I had a fundraiser last night.
That would have been one, yeah. But the same, running the center has a high rent camp.
No, we had a very good last night. We got done. Drive over there rather than starting. Driving over. We're going to do that tomorrow. Back over here tomorrow.
Yeah, you're fine.
There you go. Channel change here, and we can.
Yeah, wait on me,
Good to see you. Good to see you.
All right. Well, then I'll move a little further over this way.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Hey, how you doing?
1, 2. So I'm leaving mine right there.
Oh, you want it on there, okay. All right. Everybody ready? Great, thank you for, thanks for coming out this afternoon. We wanted to just give you an update as to where we are with the announcement tour. Obviously, we're crossing the state today, and it's been a very interesting process. We've met with small business owners in Oakland County. We did the same thing in Flint, and we'll do that again later on this afternoon in Grand Rapids. And what we're talking with them about is, you know, it's been characterized as a malaise, kind of the Carter malaise again that we're feeling here over the last number of years about what do we need to do to get this economy moving again, to get back to a point where we are creating jobs. Obviously in Michigan we're in double-digit unemployment numbers. Nationally we're still over 9%. And the interesting thing is, as I talk with business owners across the state, people who are the job creators in America, they have kind of mixed emotions. Number one, they are optimistic about the state, the potential of this state, the potential of their businesses to create jobs. They see opportunities galore. There are opportunities for them to invest, to create jobs. But at the same time, they're frustrated, and what they're asking for is they're asking for help. They're not asking for more federal programs. They're not asking for more federal spending. What they're saying is, in so many areas, we want to step up, we want to create jobs, we want to invest, and the end result is that there have been barriers that have been put up by the federal government to making that happen. They're looking for regulatory relief. No one brought up tax relief today. You know, it's kind of like, that's not the main barrier. The main barrier that they're facing today is regulatory burdens. And they'll go through the list with you very quickly. They'll say, number one, they have no idea what the long-term impact will be of Obamacare. They know that in the short term, what they've seen is that after the passage of Obamacare, is that their insurance rates have gone up by 20%. And they're afraid that this is going to continue, so what they're doing is they're holding on to their cash. They're saying, we're not going to hire more employees until we get a better idea of what the impact is going to be from Obamacare. So they're saying, why don't you just roll back Obamacare? The second thing that they're seeing is all across the marketplace. And when they're talking about economic recovery, what they so often said is economic recovery starts when you have a recovery in the housing market. This morning in Oakland County, we had a mortgage banker, we had a builder, and what they're saying is what's coming out of OSHA, what's coming out of the Dodd-Frank bill has just put a wet blanket all over investment into the housing market. It has killed the housing market. I think this year we're going to build something like 2,000 to 4,000 homes in Michigan. At its peak, we were building 54,000 new homes. It's because of the costs that are coming out of the rules and regulations of OSHA, and of the Dodd-Frank bill. You know, so you see this regularly. The third thing that they talk about is, and this is great because this is an area where I've got a tremendous amount of background, is education. And education kind of forms a framework and a great example. What people want in education is they want control of their local schools. They're saying, you know, rather than creating a new program out of Washington on top of the 500 education programs that we already have, why are we creating one more new program, as the president talked about last week, of hiring more teachers? Why are we creating one more program for school construction, school renovation, and school updating? They all know, and they've all heard from their local superintendents, their local school folks, and they said, you know, the easiest way to get more money into our local schools is not for Washington to spend more money, which means that we've got to apply for the money. We may or may not get the money because of some bureaucratic decision out of Washington. Rather than applying for school construction money, we get it, they audit it. You know, there's a very simple, easy way to get more money back into education. It's called repeal of No Child Left Behind, which all of them say has been a massive burden on them, saying, you know, Mr. President, it will cost you zero to put more money into my school districts. It will cost me zero in terms of bureaucracy in that. If you just say we're going to get rid of the rules and mandates of No Child Left Behind, we're going to have the money come from the federal government, but it's not going to come with strings attached. That way we will allow you'll allow us to invest in education where we think it's most appropriate and what we need in our schools. And one school may need construction, one school may need more teachers, another school may need an investment in technology, but don't put all of the school districts across America into another one-size-all-fits program. You know, these are the things that small businesses and constituents across Michigan are clamoring for. The freedom to invest, the freedom to grow, and the freedom to create new jobs. And it's talked about, we're frustrated with an activist government that in many cases opposes new investment and makes it hard for job creation. What we're looking for is we're looking for government to get out of the way and for government to be supportive. You know, and these are exactly the kinds of issues that I fought for years in Washington, for exactly those kinds of reforms and the kinds of results that would empower the private sector. You know, I was one of a lonely 24 that fought against No Child Left Behind and eventually voted against No Child Left Behind because it was a massive expansion of the federal government's role in K-12 education, exactly the wrong direction to go. You know, I fought for reform with the Teamsters Union. When the Teamsters Union was being run by a corrupt leadership, when it was being run by Ron Carey, we led the hearings that led to an overturn of the election, eventually led to Ron Carey being ushered out of the Teamsters, and we gave that union back to its members. You know, I fought for intelligence reform after 9/11 and led the effort, imperfect, but led the effort to the creation of a new structure for the intelligence community, imperfect, but successful, and that we've not been attacked in our homeland for the last 10 years since 9/11. So it's made tremendous strides in keeping America safe. It's exactly the kind of effort that we need now to move us forward, to get government out of the activist role and get government into the supportive role of job creators, which is getting rid of the rules and regulations and allowing businesses to do what they do best, which is to invest, to create jobs, to take risks, to innovate, and to move forward. That's what this campaign is going to be about. You know, we're excited about all the support that we've gotten. Over 700 grassroots activists signed on to our campaign. Every person that ran for governor in the last race on the Republican side of the ticket has endorsed our campaign. Tom George, Mike Bouchard, Mike Cox, Rick Snyder, and I think what we're looking for bringing the balance back in terms of the role of the federal government, the state government, and local government. Forming that partnership and that discussion and that dialogue at all levels so that we can work with a governor like Rick Snyder, we can work with a county executive like Brooks Patterson to open up the economy and open it up to investment and job creation. That's what this campaign is going to be about. It's going to be about restoring the power back at the level of individuals, families, and communities, and bringing that balance back. With that, I'm more than willing to take any questions that anybody may have.
So Congressman, you're saying you still want the same amount of money involved with No Child Left Behind, but no strings attached?
Exactly how we work through that process. I'll tell you, as I talked with local school leaders, and I just asked them and say, how would you feel if we cut federal investment in education by 20%? And it's kind of like, whoa, you can't do that. And then you say, but what if I get rid of the rules and regulations that come along with No Child Left Behind? And it's kind of like, I'll sign up for that deal. The bottom line is the federal government should minimize its role in K through 12 education. That money should never go from a state to Washington to be reappropriated back to states. That money should stay in the states. It's the same thing with highway funding. Back in 1998, 1999, working with John Kasich, we proposed one of the first bills and had one of the first votes in the House that said gas tax money stays in the state of Michigan and it doesn't go to Washington, D.C., where it comes back with all kinds of strings and mandates. Leave the money in Michigan, leave Michigan's money in Michigan, leave Ohio's money in Ohio, so that states can determine their priorities as to whether they need to fix bridges and potholes or whether they want to build bike paths and those types of things. Those are state decisions. Those shouldn't be federal mandates.
It sounds, you're talking about a different role for government, a supportive role versus a more intrusive one, but in a way it almost sounds like you're saying no role. I mean, if you're talking about not having, Dodd-Frank, you're saying that's a hindrance. Considering the troubles that we're still seeing in the banking industry, do you really think that not having Dodd-Frank is what's...
I think take a look at what Dodd-Frank has done to the banking and investment community. I serve on the board for a local community bank. We had a home builder and a mortgage banker in the meeting this morning. And what they will tell you is that the ramifications of Dodd-Frank has been to put a wet blanket over the housing market, to make it almost impossible for people to refinance, making it very, very difficult for people to get that first mortgage and buy that first home. The paperwork, there was just an editorial by someone in the banking industry that talked about, that for every person that is originating and writing loans, it appears that they have to have one more person who's filling out the paperwork and the bureaucracy and the rules and regulations that came with Dodd-Frank. So we're not at all saying no rules and regulations. Absolutely not. It's kind of like, let's make sure that what we're putting in place is smart regulatory reform, not burdensome regulatory reform. The mortgage banker told the story this morning about, the head of their organization went to meet with a senator who's on the Senate Finance and Banking Committee. And as they were going through this process, the senator came back and said, you know what? We know more about your business than what you do. I'm sorry, I think that's the wrong answer. It's kind of like, let us understand exactly what Dodd-Frank has done to this, to your industry, what it has done to the housing market, and let's work through this and let's identify the problems. So the home builder this morning, the new requirement that is now working its way through OSHA says that people who are working at certain heights, I don't have all the specifics, he didn't give them, but it's like 6 or 8 feet off the ground, or potentially in a basement where they could fall down. They now have to be tied off. They need to be tethered to something. So they went through the training that was put out by OSHA and by my OSHA. And they asked a very simple question. What should we be tethered to? And the guy said, well, maybe you could just tie yourself to the ball of the pickup truck, the hitch, which kind of, we all started laughing because we all had the same image in our mind of the guy being tethered to the pickup truck and someone going in the pickup truck and going to get a cup of coffee or going to get lunch. But these are the kinds of, and when, if OSHA finds any violations, it's a $5,000 penalty, at least as it was described to me this morning by this home builder. And he says, you know, we work under thousands of pages of regulations. There's a couple hundred more coming. We can't understand all these rules and regulations. And like I said, I was there in 2001 when No Child Left Behind passed. It was the initiative, the bold education reform initiative by President George Bush. It was supported across the board by Republicans, by the teachers' unions, by local school boards, local administrators, because what did they see? They saw a honeypot of money that said, wow, you know, what they didn't figure on and what they've now seen 10 years later is the honeypot of money never came. But the rules and regulations did. And, you know, so yes, there are hundreds of new rules and regulations under No Child Left Behind. And your local school administrators, the people that are in the classroom each and every day with our kids, will say this has detracted from the learning experience. It hasn't enhanced it. And that's why, you know, this is why we're helping these kids get a better education. We're improving our educational system by getting rid of these mandates, and that model works across many different segments.
So is the No Child Left Behind repeals of the first thing you work on in the Senate? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm not saying that there are all kinds of issues. I think the first thing that you work on clearly is economic reform. It is about job creation. We need to get the economic engine going again, which is taking a look at the regulatory reform in Washington. It is taking a look at repealing Obamacare and putting in place smart reforms for health care, and it is allowing for energy exploration in the United States. I mean, those are the three things that I would initially go to work on. If you're taking a look at regulatory reform and getting the federal budget in balance, clearly one of the areas that you would go to is you would take a look at education, you would like to take a look at transportation, and those types of things. And in many of those areas, this is where you can work with states and local communities where the unity that you had in terms of passing No Child Left Behind 10 years ago, you almost have that same coalition now coming together and saying, let's reform it, if not repeal No Child Left Behind, because it hasn't helped the kid in the classroom.
Last question. Whose endorsement were you more surprised to get, Mike Cox's or Rick Snyder's?
Well, we were talking, to all kinds of folks as we were going through this process. They were all pleasant surprises as we went through this process. We were thrilled when I was thrilled yesterday morning when I got the email from Mike saying that he was on board and was going to do everything that he could do to make sure that that I would be the next senator from Michigan. Obviously, very excited to get Rick's endorsement. I think that he sees that you know, in terms of bringing the economy back, we share similar philosophies. And, you know, we were thrilled that when we put out an email to grassroots supporters, that we had over 700 of them respond and say, you know, Pete, we're with you. We want you to be our next senator. Hey, anytime that you can get an endorsement from that kind of a broad spectrum, from the chief executive of the state to 700 grassroots people, we are thrilled and we're gratified each and every time that something like that happens.
So you and Mike have officially buried the hatchet?
Mike and I, whatever hatchet there was, we've agreed to work together to make sure that Michigan has a new senator. He and I have talked a number of times over the last few weeks. We've had great conversations. If there was a hatchet, it's gone. We are committed to working together and getting the results. You know, not only to get me to be elected as the next senator from the state of Michigan, but what we're both concerned about, what Rick and I are concerned about, is putting in place policies that will put Michigan people back to work. That is the most important thing that we can do, is create a government that, in a framework that allows for job creation, encourages job creation rather than stifles it. We see the pain and the hurt throughout the state. We want people back to work, and so it's not about personal agendas or anything like that. It's about getting the results for Michigan.
Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks.
Do a little